This is part 4 of the Intro to R video for STS 205. In this video, we're going to go through section 2.6 of the Arnold and Tilton book on character vectors, and we're also going to start working with our Markdown notebooks. So before we get started with Markdown notebooks, we have to install a couple of packages. So packages are sets of functions and objects and various good things that don't come with base R. Many packages are built by users. You can build R packages, and they're very easy to install as long as they are on the CRAN repository, which most of the packages we'll be using R. So the first package we need is the R Markdown package. So the way you install any package that's on the CRAN repository is with install.packages and in the parentheses the name of the package. So R Markdown. I already have it installed, so I don't know if it's going to, yeah, there it goes. Then the next thing we want is install.packages, tiny text. This is a LaTeX installation, so this is what's going to allow us to save our notebooks to PDF files. Okay, and then we want to do tiny text install tiny text with empty parentheses. And it did not do this for me already. It did not do this for me now because I had already done it previously. But as long as you don't already have LaTeX installed on your machine, this should work for you. Okay, so to start in our Markdown notebook, we're going to come back up here, but instead of choosing our script, we're going to choose our notebook. And what we get is kind of a template for a notebook. So the notebook has 3 elements. So the first thing is this header, which goes in between three dashes at the beginning, 3 dashes at the end. This header is in a format called YAML. It's YAML, which stands for Yet Another Markup Language. And the elements that you absolutely need are the title and the output format. And there are several output formats that we'll talk about, but for now it's HTML notebook. Title, we'll call it Humanities Data in R, section 2.6. Okay, so that's the header is the first element. The next element is this section here, and this is a text chunk. It's also known as a markdown chunk because this section can be formatted using Markdown. So this is the text chunk. Okay, so we were able to include human readable text in our script using comments, but this just gives us a lot more options for readable text, and it really lets us intersperse text with code and the results of code in good ways. So I'm not going to explain it a whole lot right now because you'll see as we go on. But so one of the nice things about this format is that we can, or the nice thing about a Markdown notebook is that we can use Markdown formatting to make it look nice and to include things like hyperlinks. So this right here is a hyperlink. So I said I can format it using Markdown, and so square brackets for the text that will appear in the link and round parentheses for the URL. There's other formatting we can do in Markdown. So I can So I can make text italic or bold, and you can see a lot more about Markdown formatting here at this Markdown guide. Okay, so the third element is the code chunk, and this, of course, is the most important part because this is where we put our code. And so for the code chunk, so we have our instructions right here. Add a new chunk by clicking the Insert Chunk button. So that's here. Insert R. You can use other languages as well. But you can also just type these 3 backticks and the R curly brackets to get a code chunk. So let's start out with the example that's in the book. So we're creating a vector called stringvec, and it's taking the value of pear, apple, and pineapple. So to run code that's in a chunk like this, and I'm actually just going to take this out. Okay, so to run this code, I can click this green arrow, and you can see here in my global environment that I now have this string vector. Again, there was no output because I didn't ask for anything. I was making an assignment, a value assignment. But I can say class stringvec, run it again, and the output now is it's right below this chunk of code, which is really handy. I don't have to go back and forth between my document and the console. So okay, so this object stringvec is a vector of strings or of character strings of texts. So it has 3 elements: pear, apple, and pineapple. And so you can see these one at a time with the same kind of bracket notation that we used before. And so we can see that the second element of stringvec is the word apple. We can also just see the whole thing. And what might not be obvious is that we can also have variables that are just individual words or phrases. Even you can even have a whole book in a single variable. So we can just have variable called fruit, and you can call it apples and oranges, or this is the value. So it's called fruit. The value is apples and oranges, and we can see it right here. We have a variable called fruit that takes the value apples and oranges. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is look at the paste function. So let's say I want to use this notebook to make some notes to myself. So I'm going to come down here. So I'm now below this code chunk and the output, and I'm going to write some notes to myself about the paste function. So function is useful for manipulating character variables. And now I'm going to actually use the paste function. So I'll make a little code chunk right here. Close it up. And so I'm going to use the example from the book. Okay, so this is the example that's in the book. And what it's going to do when I run it, it's going to take every element of string vec and paste attached to it the word juice. And the element and the word juice are going to be separated by an empty space. So we can see when we run it that we get pear juice, apple juice, pineapple juice. And so the question is, what is this that I have? It's right now it's really just output. But let's say we're going to save it as a new vector. And again, we don't have the output now because we're making an assignment operator, but let's add some parentheses so that we can see it. We do also see it right here, but there it is. And what it is, my class, UVec, what it is a character vector of length 3. So we started with a character vector of length 3. We attached the word juice to each element of it, and we ended up with a new character vector of length 3. Interesting thing about this paste function is that we actually didn't need this sep because an empty space is the default. So let's say we were to get rid of that. We have the exact same output. Okay, so in my notes to myself here, the paste function is useful for manipulating character variables. If I want to indicate to myself that paste is code, I'm going to put a backtick before and after, and that's going to format it as code. And I'm probably going to want to add a little note to myself here about what paste does.